In 1950, if you wanted a car, you bought American. Detroit ruled the road. It seemed like it always would. 30 years later, that world was gone. This is how a defeated nation quietly conquered the American road. It is a story of engines, patience, and a war fought with reliability. Our story begins in the ashes of the Second World War. Japan lay in ruins, its factories bombed, its cities broken. But out of that wreckage, a new kind of industry began to rise. Three names would soon shake the world: Toyota, Honda, and Datsun. Datsun would later become the company we now know as Nissan. Step by step, Japan rebuilt its ruined industry from nothing. A defeated nation had one thing left to prove: that it could build things well. Quality became a matter of national pride, not merely profit. There was no money for waste, and no room for failure. They did not try to outmuscle the Americans. Not yet. Instead, they built small, cheap, reliable cars. Cars for a poor nation that could not waste a single drop of fuel. In America, nobody was worried. The tiny imports seemed like toys. Detroit was building giants. Long, heavy, powerful machines. The 1960s were the golden age of American horsepower. Big engines, big fins, and gasoline so cheap nobody counted the cost. Fuel was almost free, and the American car drank deeply. The open road belonged to Detroit, and business had never been better. Who would ever want a small, plain car from across the ocean? The answer was hiding just over the horizon, and it would arrive with the price of oil. In 1973, the first blow landed. The OPEC oil embargo sent fuel prices soaring almost overnight. For the first time, Americans waited in long lines just to fill their tanks. Those huge, thirsty engines suddenly felt like a terrible mistake. And there, on the lot, sat the little Japanese cars. Cheap to buy. Cheap to run. Sipping fuel instead of gulping it. Nervous drivers gave them a try. And they were surprised. The cars did not break down. They simply ran, day after day. Then came the second blow, in 1979. The Iranian Revolution threw the oil world into chaos. Once again the pumps ran dry, and once again the lines returned. Fuel prices roughly doubled again. Panic returned to the pumps. Now the small, fuel-efficient car was not a joke. It was a lifeline. After 2 oil shocks, Americans wanted a car that would not bankrupt them at the pump. The Japanese car fit that new America perfectly. Small, thrifty, and dependable. And Detroit was caught flat-footed, still building thirsty gas guzzlers. Worse still, Detroit's own quality had quietly begun to slip. Rattles, rust, and breakdowns had become almost expected in an American car. A reputation gap was opening, and buyers could feel it in every drive. The Japanese advantage was not luck. It was built into the cars themselves. They were cheaper. They were more reliable. They used far less fuel. Behind them stood a new way of building things. The Japanese called it lean manufacturing. Waste nothing. Improve constantly. They gave it a name: Kaizen. The endless pursuit of a little better. Every worker was asked to fix flaws before they ever left the line. 1,000 tiny improvements added up to a huge advantage. At Toyota they built something they called the Toyota Production System. Parts arrived exactly when they were needed, and not a moment before. Just in time. Nothing sat idle. No warehouse full of waiting steel. No money frozen in place. Defects hunted down and crushed before a single car reached a buyer. Where Detroit repaired cars after they were built, Japan built them right the first time. The result was simple. Better cars, built for less money. And American buyers noticed the difference in their driveways. Word spread from neighbor to neighbor. These cars just last. Slowly, quietly, the tide began to turn. By the late 1970s, the imports were everywhere. And then came the year that changed the balance of power. By 1980, the numbers told a shocking story. Japanese imports made up roughly 28% of the United States car market. Nearly 1 in 3 new cars sold in America now came from Japan. That same year, Japan's car production topped 10 million vehicles. And Japan overtook the United States as the world's largest car producer. For the first time in living memory, America was not number 1. It was a milestone few had thought possible a single generation earlier. On American highways, foreign names were quickly becoming ordinary. The nation that invented the assembly line had been passed. For Detroit, 1980 was not just a bad year. It was a wound. The big three carmakers lost about $4 billion that year. And the human cost was even harder to look at. Roughly 300,000 American autoworkers were laid off. Whole towns that lived and breathed cars fell silent. Plants that had run for decades went dark, their gates chained shut. The words Rust Belt entered the language to describe what was left behind. The engines that once meant pride now meant fear. Families who had built cars for generations lost everything. Anger rose. People wanted someone to blame. And the blame fell on the little cars from across the sea. The pressure moved from the streets to the halls of power. Washington leaned hard on Tokyo for a deal. And rather than face tariffs, Japan agreed to hold itself back. It was called a voluntary export restraint. Starting May 1, 1981, Japan capped its own shipments. Exports were limited to about 1.68 million cars a year. Rows of cars waited at the ports, their numbers now counted and capped. With supply limited, dealers could charge more for every Japanese car they had. It was politics, not the market, that finally slowed the imports. Detroit had bought itself some breathing room. Or so it hoped. But the Japanese answer was not to retreat. It was to adapt. If they could not ship as many cars in, they would build them here. Japanese makers began raising factories inside America itself. These new plants were called transplants. Honda opened a plant in Ohio, employing American workers. American hands now assembled Japanese designs on American soil. The quality methods traveled with the factories, taking root in the heartland. Now the cars said made in America, but built the Japanese way. The export limit meant to hurt them had made them stronger. And they had one more move that no one saw coming. Instead of only selling cheap, Japan decided to move upmarket. If they could beat Detroit on price, why not beat them on luxury too? In 1989, a brand new name appeared. Lexus. It aimed straight at the finest cars from Germany and America. The move stunned rivals who had dismissed Japan as a maker of cheap little cars. Quiet, refined, and flawless. Luxury built with the same obsession for quality. The little economy cars had grown up into rivals for the finest machines. Japan was no longer the underdog. It was the standard. Back in Detroit, the lesson was finally sinking in. To survive, the Americans had to change how they built cars. They studied the Japanese methods they had once mocked. Quality was no longer optional. It was a matter of survival. Detroit was forced to take reliability as seriously as its rivals did. The very methods born in Japan now saved the American factory. Slowly, painfully, American cars got better. But the balance of power in the car world had permanently shifted. The customer now expected a car to simply work. Every time. And that expectation was Japan's true legacy. Think about what actually happened here. A nation that had lost a war did not conquer America with weapons. Japan did not beat Detroit with force. It beat Detroit with reliability, efficiency, and patience. No single dramatic battle. Just a better car, again and again. While Detroit chased power, Japan simply chased perfection. It was a quiet revolution, one well-built car at a time. Each satisfied driver became the next salesman. And drop by drop, the flood became unstoppable. The small cars once called toys had rewritten the rules of the road. The empire of Detroit did not fall in a day. It was worn down, slowly, by machines that refused to break. And the challenger it never respected became a giant of its own. Today, Japanese cars fill the highways of America. Names once foreign are now as common as any homegrown brand. The invasion is over. It ended long ago. And the strangest part is how quietly it happened. And the winner was decided not by horsepower, but by trust. This is what Gasoline Ghosts was made to remember. The rise and fall of the machines, and the world they built. How a defeated nation quietly humbled the giant of Detroit. Thanks for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.